MCs are coming out real. Like you been to hold me, I'ma check my feel. You claim to be a genius, man, you can't fight it. You might flip a script, but you know you didn't write it. I'm coming up at you really old school like Houdini. The ibbity bibbity bop, I boom boom like Mancini. Feed me, hip hop, exotic like Kiwi. I got more power than the Rangers on the TV. Jumping on the track, spinning, flipper than I dismount. My styles are more free than the 5-finger discount. Let me in your mind and pass me the brain shovel. I'm thinking, baby, all my mentals into your level with the boom boom bitty bitty bop to the bang. If you swing your thing with the gang, you can hang. Come and ride with me and the nocturnal crew. To the old school for the deja vu. I whip a track in hands with more jazz in Utah. Deeper like a tuba, dive into it like a scuba. After my style change, gang will remain. Rhyming to the day I named Big Daddy Kane. I'm sick of New Jacks trying to compete. I'll go put on my Pumas and watch Beat Street. But I'ma let them know cause my soul's full of mischief. Even your moms will say, damn, the kid's sweet. A lot of rappers coming out harder than rugby. That's cool as
It's not muted anymore. Here, I have an idea. Let's start over. Welcome to my channel for the first time tonight. I'm very pleased that you could join me in my abode. As I'm saying for the first time, I'm here with my liquid death, which has delicious water. However, they also have iced tea. This is called Slaughterberry. Delicious. It has agave, vitamins, a little bit of caffeine, which I need because I'm quite boring. I've done that for the first time tonight as well. Let's see who's with us in the chat. I needed a moment to scroll. Some person is here. Welcome, some person. I'm glad you could join. Hello, Dean. I'm most glad that you could join. Is this a bedtime story? If you want it to be, I'll probably put you to sleep with my excessive droll. There's some person again. Thank you. Do you want to play a game is here? I do not want to play a game right now, but thank you. All stories are bedtime stories if you don't care enough, Dean. You know, if you need an editor or a proofreader, I do happen to be one. And my prices are excellent because I care. Kevin Ryan - Mouth Almighty. Very nice to see you. Welcome to my channel. Some person is here again. Pirate. And then a pirate flag. I love that. Mo Biggs. Welcome. It's nice to see you again. My nose itches. Mo says, Hail some person. Comics May. Do you want to play a game? And Lady Alley Books. Hail Mo. He also says, Hail Kevin Ryan. Some person says, Hello Mo Biggs. Kevin Ryan says, Hi Mo. Some person says, Allie's site, get her books. My site is down right now because it is going through much construction currently. But I really appreciate you sharing the links. Thank you. Allie is brought to you by viewers like you. Kevin Ryan says, Hi, some. Some person shares my Ko-Fi or coffee. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm probably wrong, as I am just a woman, and I probably should not have been taught to read. And yet here I am. Dean says I'm muted. I don't know what you're talking about. Kevin Ryan says, I just read a good book yesterday. Gross. A Dog's Purpose. Heart-wrenching. Ah, yes. Dogs. Some person says mute. I don't want to mute myself. Then you couldn't hear my delightful musings. Dean says, no sound. Well, now you just sound insane. Kevin Ryan says, Allie seems unusually quiet tonight. I apologize. Mo says, when gatekeeping the chat backfires. I'm not sure to what you're referring to, Mo, but I apologize. I'm often very silly, as you can tell. Dean says, good day, Mo. Mo says, hail, Dean. Dean says she doesn't know we can't hear her. Incorrect. I do know that you can hear me. I haven't the foggiest idea of what you're talking about. Kevin Ryan says, she should have those title cards like in old movies. I should. Thank you. I'll take that into consideration. Dean says, damn it, woman. Thank you. I needed that. Mo says, womp womp. Or maybe he said, womp womp. Yes, I think that's actually how you pronounce it. Some person says, I've seen it worse. Once saw a streamer that talked for 20 minutes with mute on. That does sound tragic. Kevin says, what do you get when you cross a dog with a silent movie? A malamute. That's very clever. Thank you, Kevin Ryan. Mo says, I'm feeling some nostalgia for the muted era. M-E. Thank you. I do deserve an Emmy. Kevin Ryan says, agave at the office. I am not in an office, as I am usually home. This is my writer's nook. I'm a writer. Hashtag just a writer. Dean says, good day, some person. Some person says, hello, comics mate. Dillard Draws is here. He says, hey, Allie. Hey, Dillard. Mo says, hail, Dillard. Dillard says, hail, Mo. Some person is trying to share my Twitter, but I apologize. That is no longer my handle. Some person says, hello, Dillard. Mo says, is Allie doing a bit, or is this some kind of P_T_SD? Question mark. I don't think I'm capable of doing a bit, as you call it, because as a woman, I am not funny. But this is also not P_T_SD, so I think I'm just doing my show, as I usually do. This is very normal. Dillard says, hello, some person. How is Allie doing today? I'm not sure I can answer this question since it appears like you're asking someone else how I am doing, so I decline. Dean says, I am recording this from a perfectly normal room with windows. That's true. This is a perfectly normal room with windows that are closed right now, but I do have candles. They're very nice. I like them. They smell like pumpkins. Some person says, have you heard? The bird is the word. I have not heard. Mo says, I can't believe Allie didn't like Kevin's baking pun yesterday. Well, because it's gross. Felix says, hail and bow, brother, legendary chatmaster Mo Biggs. Thank you for joining, Felix. He also says, justice for Mo. I stand with Mo. I'm sorry. He says, hashtag justice for Mo, hashtag I stand with Mo. I have to make sure I read the hashtags. That way I stay relevant. Mo says, hail, brother, the legendary link master, Felix Haas. Bow. Bow indeed. Felix says, hail and bow, Lady Allie Books. That's me. Dean says, good day, Felix. Felix says, hail and bow, Dean. Some person says, hello, Felix. Felix says, hail and bow, brother. Darren says, oh, I apologize. Darren Wagner says, Allie's using her NPR voice tonight. Am I? Okay. Mo says, hail, D-Wag Jr. Some person says, hello, Darren Wagner. Some person shares my actual Twitter handle. Thank you. Mo says, the little t wasn't a typo. For some reason, it's not letting me post a capital T in the chat. Oh, I'm very sorry. I'm not in charge of that. I encourage you to contact YouTube. Snuggy says, hey, Allie. Hey. Mo says, hail, Snuggy, Junior, hashtag teach me how to, Snuggy. Very funny. I, too, know what is hip. Snuggy says, what's up, chat? I'm disappointed in your spelling. Marsupial Gamer says, hey. Kevin says, she's doing Allie SMR. Gesundheit. Mo says, hail, Marsupial Gamer. Snuggy says, yo, Mo Biggs. Felix says, hail and bow, Darren Wagner, Dillard Draws, Kevin, Ryan, Mouth Almighty. Do you want to play a game? And Marsupial Gamer. Dillard says, Marsupial, I knew I would find you here. I need help with Minecraft. It sounds like you do. Some person says, I think she's trying something new, Dillard. Snuggy says, dilapidated pumpkin? No, because I enjoy the smell of fresh pumpkins and cinnamon and apples. happy sense, not decay. Snuggie says, hey, some person. Yo, Dillard draws. Some person says, hello, Snuggie. Some person also says, hello, Marsupial Gamer. Marsupial Gamer says, it's the ever-popular Ali Meta. True. Snuggie says, hey, comics mate. Kevin says, Felix. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Felix. I don't get it. Felix says, Dean Hame's store created by me. That's me. I did that. That's true. I did. It's right there. Click on it. It's very fun. Darren Wagner says, I want an Ali cooking stream. Ah. Hilda Lore says, make sure you guys like the stream and share it out. Yes, and if you do, I thank you. Mo says, if only Ali read all our comments this way when we were making hilarious jokes, instead of always skipping those. That's true. If only. I shall try to do better in the future. Felix says, hail and bow, brother. Dillard says, this is brilliant. Brilliant. Ali is the avant-garde of the new aesthetic. Interesting take. I am not sure if it is hot or not. There used to be a website called that. Snuggie says, hey, Hail the Lore. He also says, hey, Felix Haas. Hail the Lore says, yo, Snuggie Jr. Mo says, is Ali doing her Rosemary Kennedy impression? I don't know who that is. Dark Gift says, why can't I see Ali's Twitter? I don't know. Mo says, hail, Anthony. Dark Gift says, yo, Mo. That rhymes. Marsupial says, Dillard, I'm driving, but I can help later. Felix shares the clip to Meathead's landing page, which I also created. Kevin Ryan says, Kevin Ryan, Mouth Almighty. I apologize. I got your name incorrect. Mo Biggs, ouch. I get the Kennedy reference. I don't. I am not that old. Felix says, Demifoot Urban Sasquatch, and shares a link. Go look at that. Marsupial Gamer says, yo, Anthony. Mo Biggs says, Rosemary is JFK's sister who had a botched lobotomy. I have not had a botched lobotomy. However. Anyway, Felix says, hail and bow, Anthony. Snuggie says, protected. Dark Gift says, yo, Felix. Dillard says, DG, you have to click on the thing. Dark Gift says, yeah, but I was following her, Snuggie. Mobig says, it's good that only knows about and enjoys things that happened during her lifetime. Incorrect. I love many things that have not happened during my lifetime, such as Renaissance paintings, the invention of cheese, sunglasses. Felix Haas says, Borork, a bloody bounty. Indeed, go and back Borork. Yes, go and back Borork. That way I can do it too. Dark Gift says, yo, Marsupial. Felix Haas shares the link to Andromenoids, which is also a book. Mobig says, Ali only. Dillard says, now Ali is caught up with the chat. I'm not, though. Darren Wagner says, however, that does sound like something I would say. Some person says, hello, Dark Gift Comics Presents. Snuggie says, Dark Gift Comic Presents. Dark Gift Comic Presents says, yo, some person. Kevin Ryan says, What's scary, I'm old enough to remember both Lenin and Groucho being alive when I was a kid. I am not. Marsupial says, so are we entertaining ourselves tonight, or is the alley AI going to come up with something else? I don't believe in AI. It's against my religion. Dillard says, now she's all caught up. Mo Big says, something in a language I'm not sure I can pronounce. Yitibij yitibihije. Interesting. Some person says, now that I am all caught up with the chat, for real, I promise I totally see every single one and I'm not ignoring any of them whatsoever at all, because that doesn't sound like something that I personally would ever do. I'm going to read a book to you. It will be very exciting. You might even learn something. I am personally very overjoyed to present to you The Sneetches and Other Stories. It's shiny. Are you ready? I figured that I should read this book because I think many people have forgotten its lessons. Would you like to see the pictures? I will show you the pictures. I will move so you can see the pictures better. Now, keep up. I know for some people, it's difficult. Oh, look, Kevin said something else. Sneetches get stitchies. Interesting. I've never heard that one. Mobig says, odds that Allie got a star tattoo on her stomach are 0. I have no star tattoos. That's stupid. Storytime with Friends says, good evening. Good evening yourself. And Mo hails him. Let's begin. The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. Now, the Starbelly Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain belly Sneetches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the Starbelly Sneetches would brag, we're the best kind of Sneetch on the beaches. With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort, we'll have nothing to do with the plain belly sort. And whenever they met some when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them, without even talking. When the Starbelly children went out to play ball, could a plain belly get in the game? Not at all. You only could play if your bellies had stars, and the plain belly children had none upon theirs. When the Starbelly Sneetches had Frankfurter roasts, or picnics, or parties, or marshmallow toasts, they never invited the plain belly Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them, year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the plain belly Sneetches were moping and doping alone on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. My friends, he announced in a voice clear and keen, my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean. And I've heard of your troubles, I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappie. I've come here to help you, I have what you need, and my prices are low and I work at great speed, and my work is 100% guaranteed to deliver in a good amount of time. Then quickly Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine, and he said, "You want stars like a starbelly sneetch? My friends, you can have them. $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard." So they clambered inside. Then the big machine roared, and it clonked, and it bonked, and it jerked, and it burked, and it bopped them about, but the thing really worked. While the plain belly sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon thars. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start, "We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties. And now we can go to your Frankfurter parties." "Good grief," groaned the ones who had stars at the first. "We're still the best sneetches, and they are the worst. But now how in the world will we know," they all frowned, "if which kind is what, or the other way round?" Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, "Things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who. That is perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best sneetches on beaches, and all it will cost you is $10 eaches." "Belly stars are no longer in style," said McBean. "What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars, so you won't look like sneetches who have them on thars." And that handy machine, working very precisely, removed all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then with snoots in the air they paraded about, and they opened their beaks, and they let out a shout. "We know who is who. Now there isn't a doubt. The best kind of sneetches are sneetches without." Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guess, YouTube, things really got into a horrible mess. All the rest of that day on those wild, screaming beaches, the fix-it-up chappie kept fixing up sneetches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machines they raced round and about again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money. They kept running through, until neither the plain nor the starbellies knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up, and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. They never will learn. You can't teach a sneetch. That's a lot of money. Could be $250,000. But McBean was quite wrong. I'm quite happy to say that the sneetches got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that sneetches are sneetches, and no kind of sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day all the sneetches forgot about stars, and whether they had one or not upon thars. Timeless. Timeless book. Let's keep going. The Zacks. One day, making tracks in the prairie of Prax, came a north-going Zacks and a south-going Zacks. And it happened that both of them came to a place where they bumped. There they stood, foot to foot, face to face. "Look here now," the north-going Zacks said. "I say, you are blocking my path. You are right in my way. I'm a north-going Zacks, and I always go north. Get out of my way now, and let me go forth." "Who's in whose way?" snapped the south-going Zacks. I always go south, making south-going tracks. So you're in my way, and I ask you to move, and let me go south in my south-going groove. Then the north-going Zax puffed his chest up with pride. I never, he said, take a step to one side. And I'll prove to you that I won't change my ways if I have to keep standing here 59 days. And I'll prove to you. Distinct voices? I'll try. And I'll prove to you, yelled the south-going Zax, that I can stand here in the prairie of Prax for 59 years. For I live by a rule that I learned as a boy back in south-going school. Never budge, that's my rule. Never budge in the least. Not an inch to the west, not an inch to the east. I'll stay here, not budging. I can, and I will, if it makes you and me and the whole world stand still. Well, of course the world didn't stand still. The world grew. In a couple of years, the new highway came through, and they built it right over those two stubborn Zax, and left them there standing, unbudged, in their tracks. Looks like the world moved on. They just called it the Zax Bypass. Too many Daves. Did I ever tell you that Mrs. McCabe had 23 sons, and she named them all Dave? That sounds like a lot of the same thing over and over again. Very expensive. Well, she did, and that wasn't a smart thing to do. You see, when she wants one and calls out, "Yoo-hoo! Come into the house, Dave," she doesn't get one. All 23 Daves of hers come on the run. This makes things quite difficult at the McCaves, as you can imagine, with so many Daves, and often she wishes that when they were born, she had named one of them Bodkin Van Horn, and one of them Hoosfoos, and one of them Snim, and one of them Hotshot, and one Sunny Jim, and one of them Shadrach, and one of them Blinky, and one of them Stuffy, and one of them Stinky, another one Put-Put, another one Moonface, another one Marvin O'Gravel Balloonface, and one of them Ziggy, and one Soggy Muff, one Buffalo Bill, and one Biffalo Buff, and one of them Sneepy, and one Weepy Weed, and one Paris Garters, and one Harris Tweed, and one of them Sir Michael Carmichael Zut, and one of them Oliver Bolivar Butt, and one of them Zanzibar Buck McFate. But she didn't do it. And now it's too late. Never have regrets. What was I scared of? As a kid, this was actually my favorite story in this book. That's a fun fact about me. Well, I was walking in the night, and I saw nothing scary, for I have never been afraid of anything. Not very. Then I was deep within the woods, when suddenly I spied them. I saw a pair of pale green pants, with nobody inside them. Wow, they sound vapid. I wasn't scared, but yet I stopped. What could those pants be there for? What could a pair of pants at night be standing in the air for? And then they moved, those empty pants. They kind of started jumping. And then my heart, I must admit, it kind of started thumping. So I got out. I got out fast. As fast as I could go, sir. I wasn't scared, but pants like that, I did not care for. No, sir. After that, a week went by. Then one dark night in Greenwich, I had to do an errand there and fetch some Greenwich spinach. While I had fetched the spinach, I was starting back through town when those pants raced round a corner, and they almost knocked me down. I lost my Greenwich spinach, but I didn't even care. I ran for home. Believe me, I had really had a scare. Now, bicycles were never made for pale green pants to ride 'em, especially spooky pale green pants with nobody inside 'em. And the next night I was fishing for doubt trout on Rover River when those pants came rowing toward me. Well, I started in to shiver, and by now I was so frightened that I'll tell you, but I hate to. I screamed and rowed away and lost my hook and line and bait too. I ran and found a brickle bush. I hid myself away. I got brickles in my britches, but I stayed there anyway. I stayed all night, the next night too. I'd be there still, no doubt, but I had to do an errand, so the next night I went out. I had to do an errand, had to pick a peck of snide, in a dark and gloomy snide field that was almost 9 miles wide. I said, I do not fear those pants with nobody inside them. I said and said and said those words. I said them, but I lied them. Then I reached inside a snide bush, and the next thing that I knew, I felt my hand touch someone, and I'll bet that you know who. And there I was, caught in the snide, and in that dreadful place, those spooky empty pants and I were standing face to face. I yelled for help, I screamed, I shrieked, I howled, I yowled, I cried. Oh, save me from these pale green pants with nobody inside. But then a strange thing happened. Why, those pants began to cry. Those pants began to tremble. They were just as scared as I. I never heard such whimpering, and I began to see that I was just as strange to them as they were strange to me. I put my arm around their waist and sat right down beside them. I calmed them down. Poor empty pants with nobody inside them. And now we meet quite often, those empty pants and I, and we never shake or tremble. We both smile and we say, hi. 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 That is a good book. Did you enjoy it? I'll update with the chat now. Kevin Ryan says, this book powered by Giesel Engine. Geisel? I'm not sure the joke works if it's not pronounced the same. Some sneetches on their bellies had stars. Some sneetches had stars tattooed on their arse. I think it needs work. Mo Big says, Allie is shredding Big Pharma and their gender-affirming care grift. Yes, that is what I am doing. Mo Big says, oh, I get the point now. Mo Big says, Mick Monkey. Mo Big says, yeah boy, Zax. Incorrect. Kevin Ryan says, there is too much Zax and violence on TV. This was when I made the voice, but it was too late to do two distinct voices. If you'd like, I can read it again. Mo says, thank you. Kevin says, turn left, for we are a battleship. Turn left, for we are a lighthouse, goes the story. I don't get it. Mobig says, genuine comics should be here for his story. Some person says, these are the Daves I know. Mobig says, Buffalo Bill, WTF. Kevin Ryan says, just call them by their last names. All of them have the same last name. It's McCabe. It says that in the story. Mobig says, you ran and you pranced, yet the pants still advanced. See? Mo knows how to make a rhyme. Good job, Mo. I'm proud of you. Kevin Ryan says, one day I too saw a pair of empty pants. They stood their ground, taking a stance. Then I met a politician. I knew them by their fruit, and what stood before me was a full empty suit. Very clever. I approve. Mo Big says, beware of empty pants. There's mischief in their jeans. That's even more clever. Good job, Mo. Felix posted a laughing and crying emoji. Very cute. However, I condemn emoji use. Boo. Felix says, hail and bow, Kevin Ryan dash mouth almighty. All right, who wants another story? I know I do. Let's find one in this Amphigory. Isn't it lovely? Books are really wonderful. I love books so much. I've even done a whole video on the proper care of books. It includes an emphasis on how to keep books from getting wet. Everyone should watch it and take heed. Now I will read The Unstrung Harp by Edward Gorey. Get ready, because this is a very exciting story. The Unstrung Harp, or Mr. Earbrass Writes a Novel. Mr. Clavius Frederick Earbrass is, of course, the well-known novelist. Of his books, A Moral Dustbin, More Chains Than Clink, Was It Likely, and the Hip Deep trilogy are perhaps the most admired. Mr. Earbrass is seen on the croquet lawn of his home, Hobby's Odd, near Collapsed Pudding in Mortshire. He is studying a game left unfinished at the end of summer. On November 18th of alternate years, Mr. Earbrass begins writing his new novel. Weeks ago, he chose its title at random from a list of them he keeps in a little green notebook. It being tea time of the 17th, he is alarmed not to have thought of a plot to which the unstrung harp might apply, but his mind will keep reverting to the last biscuit on the plate. Snow was falling when Mr. Earbrass woke, which suggested he open the unstrung harp with the first flakes of what could be developed into a prolonged and powerfully purple blizzard. On paper, if not outdoors, they have kept coming down all afternoon, over and over again in all possible ways, and only now, at nightfall, have done so satisfactorily. For writing, Mr. Earbrass affects an athletic sweater of forgotten origin and unknown significance. It is always worn hindside too. Several weeks later, the loofah trickling on his knees, Mr. Earbrass mulls over an awkward retrospective bit that ought to go in Chapter 2. But where? Even the voice of the omniscient author can hardly afford to interject a seemingly pointless anecdote concerning Ladderback in Tibet, when the other characters are feverishly engaged in wondering whether to have the pond at Dishover College dragged or not. Mr. Earbrass belongs to the straying rather than to the sedentary type of author. He is never to be found at his desk unless actually writing down a sentence. Before this happens, he broods over it indefinitely while picking up and putting down again small loose objects, walking diagonally across rooms, staring out windows, and so forth. He frequently hums, more in his mind than anywhere else, themes from the Poddington Te Deum. It was one of Mr. Earbrass's better days. He wrote for so long and with such intensity that when he stopped he felt quite sick. Having leaned out a window into a strong wind for several minutes, he is now restoring himself in the kitchen and rereading the unstrung harp as far as he has gotten. He cannot help but feel that Lerp's return and almost immediate impalement on the bottle tree was one of his better ideas. The jelly in his sandwich is about to get all over his fingers. Mr. Earbrass has finished Chapter 7, and it is obvious that before plunging ahead himself, he has got to decide where the plot is to go and what will happen to it on arrival. He is engaged in making diagrams of possible routes and destinations, and wishing he had not dealt so summarily with Lerp, who would have been useful for taking retributive measures at the end of Part 3. At the moment, there is no other character capable of them. Out for a short drive, before a supper of oysters and trifle, Mr. Earbrass stops near the abandoned fireworks factory outside Something Awful. There is a drowned sort of yellow light in the west, and the impression of desolation and melancholy is remarkable. Mr. Earbrush jots down a few visual notes he suspects may be useful when he reaches the point where the action of the unstrung harp shifts to Hangdog Hall. Mr. Earbrass was virtually asleep when several lines of verse passed through his mind and left it hopelessly awake. Here was the perfect epigraph for the unstrung harp. A horrid monster has been something delayed by their indifference in the dank brown shade below the garden. His mind's eye sees them quoted on the bottom third of a right-hand page in a possibly olive-bound book he read at least 5 years ago. When he does find them, it will be a great nuisance if no clue is given to their authorship. Mr. Earbrass has driven over to Nether Millstone in search of forced green gauges, but has been distracted by a bookseller's. Rummaging among mostly religious tracts and privately printed reminiscences, he has come across The Meaning of the House, his second novel. In making sure it has not got there by mistake, as he would hardly care to pay more for it, he discovers it is a presentation copy. Poor Angus, will you ever forget the bloaters? Bloaters? Angus? The first draft of the Unsung Harp is more than half finished, and for some weeks its characters have been assuming a fitful and cloudy reality. Now a minor one named Glassglue has materialized at the head of the stairs as his creator is about to go down to dinner. Mr. Earbrass was aware of the peculiarly unpleasant nubs on his greatcoat, but not the blue-tinted spectacles. Glassglue is about to mutter something in a tone too low to be caught, and, stepping sideways, vanish. Mr. Earbrass has been rashly skimming through the early chapters, which he has not looked at for months, and now sees the unstrung harp for what it is. Dreadful, dreadful, dreadful. He must be mad to go on enduring the unexquisite agony of writing, when it all turns out drivel. Mad. Why didn't he become a spy? How does one become one? He will burn the manuscript. Why is there no fire? Why aren't there the makings of one? How did he get in the unused room on the 3rd floor? Mr. Earbrass returned from a walk to find a large carton blocking the hall. Masses of brow paper and then tissue have reluctantly given up an unnerving silver-gilt combination at Pern and Candelabrum. Mr. Earbrass recollects a letter from a hitherto unknown admirer of his work, received the week before. It hinted at the early arrival of an offering that embodied, in a different but kindred form, the same high-souled aspiration that animated its recipient's books. Mr. Earbrass can only conclude that the apathy of the lower figures is due to their having been deprived of novels. Even more harrowing than the first chapters of a novel are the last, for Mr. Earbrass anyway. The characters have one and all become thoroughly tiresome, as though he had been trapped at the same party with them since the day before. Neglected sections of the plot loom on every hand, waiting to be disposed of. His verbs seem to have withered away, and his adjectives to be proliferating past control. Furthermore, at this stage, he inevitably gets insomnia. Even rereading The Truffle Plantation, his first novel, does not induce sleep. In the blue horror of dawn, the vines in the carpet appear likely to be twining up his ankles. Though the unstrung harp is within less than a chapter of completion, pardon me, Mr. Earbrass has felt it his cultural and civic duty, and a source of possible edification, to attend a performance at Lying in the Way of Prawns, the Nephew's Tragedy. It is being put on for the first time since the early 17th century by the West Mortshire impassioned amateurs of Melpomene. Unfortunately, Mr. Earbrass is unable to take in even one of its 5 plots because he cannot get those few unwritten pages out of his mind. In that brief moment between day and night, when everything seems to have stopped for good and all, Mr. Earbrass has written the last sentence of The Unstrung Harp. The room's appearance of tidiness and Mr. Earbrass's of calm are alike deceptive. The manuscript is stuffed all anyhow in the lower right-hand drawer of the desk, and Mr. Earbrass himself is wildly distrait. His feet went to sleep some time ago, there is a dull throbbing behind his left ear, and his mustache feels as uncomfortable as if it were false or belonged to someone else. The next day Mr. Earbrass is conscious but very little more. He wanders through the house, leaving doors open and empty teacups on the floor. From time to time the thought occurs to him that he really ought to go and dress, and he gets up several minutes later, only to sit down again in the first chair he comes to. The better part of a week will have elapsed before he has recovered enough to do anything more helpful. Some weeks later, with pen, ink, scissors, paste, a decanter of sherry, and a vast reluctance, Mr. Earbrass begins to revise the unstrung harp. This means first transposing passages, or reversing the order of their paragraphs, or crumpling them up furiously and throwing them in the wastebasket. After that, there is rewriting. This is worse than merely writing, because not only does he have to think up new things just the same, but at the same time try not to remember the old ones. Before Mr. Earbrass is through, at least 1/3 of the unstrung harp will bear no resemblance to its original state. Mr. Earbrass sits on the opposite side of the study from his desk, gathering courage for the worst part of all in the undertaking of a novel, i.e., making a clean copy of the final version of the manuscript. Not only is it repulsive to the eye and hand, with its tattered edges, stains, rumpled patches, scratchings out, and scribblings, but its contents are, by this time, boring to the point of madness. A freshly filled inkwell, new pheasant feather pens, and 2 reams of the most expensive cream-laid paper are negligible inducements for embarking on such a loathsome proceeding. Holding the unstrung harp not very neatly done up in pink butcher's paper, which was all he could find in a last-minute search before leaving to catch his train for London, Mr. Earbrass arrives at the offices of his publishers to deliver it. The stairs look oddly menacing, as though he might break a leg on one of them. Suddenly the whole thing strikes him as very silly, and he thinks he will go and drop his parcel off the embankment, and thus save everyone concerned a good deal of fuss. Mr. Earbrass escaped from Messrs. Scuffle and Dustcoff, who were most anxious to go into all the ramifications of a scheme for having his novels translated into Urdu, and went to call on a distant cousin. The latter was planning to do the antique shops this afternoon, so Mr. Earbrass agreed to join him. In the 18th shop they have visited, the cousin thinks he sees a rare sort of lustre jug, and Mr. Earbrass irritatedly wonders why anyone should have had a fantod stuffed and put under a glass bell. The night before returning home to Mortshire, Mr. Earbrass allows himself to be taken to a literary dinner in a private dining-room of Le Trottoir Imbécile. Among his fellow authors, few of whom he recognizes and none of whom he knows, are Locke, Sandwich, Hepworth, Avuncular, and Lord Legbail. The unwell-looking gentleman wrapped in a greatcoat is an obscure essayist named Froust. The talk deals with disappointing sales, inadequate publicity, worse than inadequate royalties, idiotic or criminal reviews, others' declining talent, and the unspeakable horror of the literary life. The unstrung harp is over, so to speak, but far from done with. The galleys have arrived, and Mr. Earbrass goes over them with mingled excitement and disgust. It all looks so different set up in type that at first he thought they had sent him the wrong ones by mistake. He is quite giddy from trying to physically control the sheets, and at the same time keep the amount of absolutely necessary changes within the allowed pecuniary limits. Mr. Earbrass has received the sketch for the dust wrapper of the unstrung harp. Even after staring at it continuously for 20 minutes, he really cannot believe it. Whatever were they thinking of? That drawing. Those colors. Ugh. On any book, it would be ugly, vulgar, and illegible. On his book, it would be these, and also disastrously wrong. Mr. Earbrass looks forward to an exhilarating hour of conveying these sentiments to Scuffle and Dustcoff. Things continue to come, this time Mr. Earbrass's 6 free copies of The Unstrung Harp. There are, alas, at least 3 times that number of people who expect to receive one of them. Buying the requisite number of additional copies does not happen to be the solution, as it would come out almost at once, and everyone would be very angry at his wanton distribution of them to just anyone, and write him little notes of thanks ending with the remark that the unstrung harp seems rather down from your usual level of polish, but then you were probably in a hurry for the money. If it didn't come out, the list would be 3 times larger for his next book. Today, the Unstrung Harp is published, and Mr. Earbrass has come into Nether Millstone to do some errands, which could not be put off any longer. He has been uncharacteristically thorough about doing them, and it is late afternoon before he pauses in front of a bookseller's window on the way back to his car. Having made certain, out of the corner of his eye, a copy of the Unstrung Harp was in it, he is carefully reading the title of every other book there in a state of extreme and pointless embarrassment. Scuffle and Dustcough have thoughtfully, if gratuitously, sent all the papers with reviews in them. They make a gratifyingly large heap. Mr. Earbrass refuses to be intimidated into rushing through them, but he is having a certain amount of difficulty in concentrating on, or rather, making any sense whatever out of, a compendium of the minor heresies of the 12th century in Asia Minor. He has been meaning to finish it ever since he began it 2 years and 7 months before, at which time he bogged down on page 33. Pardon me. At an afternoon foregathering at the vicarage vaguely in Mr. Earbrass's honor, where he has been busy handing round cups of tea, he is brought up short by Colonel Nout, M.F.H., of the Blathering Hunt. He demands to know just what Mr. Earbrass was getting at in the last scene of chapter 15. Mr. Earbrass is afraid he doesn't know what the colonel is. Is what? Getting at himself. The colonel snorts. Mr. Earbrass sighs. This encounter, which will go on for some time, and get nowhere, will leave Mr. Earbrass feeling very weak indeed. Mr. Earbrass stands on the terrace at twilight. It is bleak, it is cold, and the virtue has gone out of everything. Words drift through his mind. Anguish, turnips, conjunctions, illness, defeat, string, parties, no parties, urns, desuetude, disaffection, claws, loss, trebizond, napkins, shame, stones, distance, fever, antipodes, mush, glaciers, incoherence, labels, miasma, amputation, tides, deceit, mourning, elsewards. Before he knew what he was doing, Mr. Earbrass found he had every intention of spending a few weeks on the continent. In a trance of efficiency, which could have surprised no one more than himself, he made the complicated and maddening preparations for his departure in no time at all. Now at dawn he stands, quite numb with cold and trepidation, looking at the churning surface of the channel. He assumes he will be horribly sick for hours and hours, but it doesn't matter. Though he is a person to whom things do not happen, perhaps they may, when he is on the other side. The end. Next will be The Listing Attic. But first, I will catch up with the chat. Mo says, such as the proper way to dog-ear a page corner so you don't lose your place. I do not suggest this. The blizzard was so frigid that Mr. Earbrass lamented that his very whims had frozen in their tracks, leaving a trail of whimsicles at his back. That's probably the best comment of the night, and I applaud you, Mr. Biggs. The Horror of One has entered the chat and says, hi, Lady Allie. Hello. Mo says, hail the Horror of One. Jack Stafford has entered and says, ahoy, Allie, Mo Biggs, Felix Haas, and all me mateys in the chat. Ahoy. Some person says, hello, the Horror of One, Jack Stafford. Mo says, hail, Jack Stafford. Jack Stafford says, oi, oi, some person. Some person says, yo, ho, ho. Jack Stafford says, a couple emojis that I cannot see. I am very sorry, but I Can't see. Kevin Ryan says, my empty pants poem needed reporting on Twitter. Mission accomplished with visuals. Well, if your mission was accomplished, then I congratulate you. You should probably get a medal. See the president for details. Kevin says, my empty pants poem needed reposting on Twitter. Mission accomplished with visuals. Oh, I see. You corrected your mistake. Thank you. Mobig says, Kevin doesn't want to leave behind any mysteries about who made his comments in he chat. Mobig says, some person says, haha. Kevin Ryan says, that was a opite, I meant a typoo, I mean fudge. Very funny. Funnier than any woman, that's for sure. Mobig says, well, you told me to find a shaggy dog, did you not? Indeed, but not so shaggy as that. Mobig says, here are some words that rhyme, pardon me, with Corey. Glory, story, allegory, Montessori. Very nice. I'm glad you're participating. Thank you very much. Felix says, hail, bow, and ahoy, Jack Stafford. Thank you, everyone. This is a very fun chat, and I appreciate all of you. Next, we'll go in for a little bit of whimsy and French. Let me know if you can spot the French. More points if you know what I say. There was a young lady named Rose who fainted whenever she chose. She did so one day while playing croquet, but was quickly revived with a hose. A headstrong young woman in Ealing threw her 2-weeks-old child at the ceiling. When quizzed why she did, she replied to be rid of a strange, overpowering feeling. They had come in the fugue to the stretto, when a dark-bearded man from a ghetto slipped forward and grabbed her tresses and stabbed her to death with a rusty stiletto. A certain young man, it was noted, went about in the heat thickly coated. He said, you may scoff, but I shan't take it off. Underneath, I am horribly bloated. A lady was seized with intent to revise her existence misspent, so she climbed up the dome of St. Peter's in Rome, where she stayed through the following Lent. There was a young woman whose stammer was atrocious, and so was her grammar, but they were not improved when her husband was moved to knock out her teeth with a hammer. A dreary young bank clerk named Fennis wished to foster an aura of menace. To make people afraid, he wore gloves of gray suede and white footgear intended for tennis. While his duchess lay practically dead, the Duke of de Garadarg said, can it be this is all? How puny, how small, have destroyed this disgrace to my bed. To a weepy young woman in Thrums, her betrothed remarked, this is what comes of allowing your tears to fall into my ears. I think they have rotted the drums. A gift was delivered to Laura from a cousin who lived in Gomorrah. Wrapped in tissue and crepe, it was peeled like a grape and emitted a pale greenish aura. A clerical student named Prine through pain sought to reach the divine. He wore a hair shirt, quite often ate dirt, and bathed every Friday in brine. Il y a une jeune fille amoureuse d'un homme qu'a un conduit entos. Il l'amène chaque soir à son caveau noir et la bat avec plante crapulose. My trip, it was vile. Balaclava I loathed. Etna was crawling with lava. The ship was all white, but it creaked in the night, and the band they did not know La Hava. There was a young woman named Plenary, who rejoiced in the practice of gunnery, till one day, unobservant, she blew up a servant, and was forced to retire to a nunnery. A young man of acumen and daring, who'd amassed a great fortune in herring, was left quite alone when it soon became known that their use at his board was unsparing. The partition of Vavasor's scowls was a sickener that came on his bowels. In a firkin his brain was found clogging a drain, and his toes were inside of some towels. As the breech's buoy swung toward the rocks, its occupant cried, "Save my socks! I could not bear the loss, for with scarlet silk floss my mamma has embroidered their clocks." An innocent maiden named Herridge was cruelly tricked into marriage. When she later found out what her spouse was about, she threw herself under a carriage. That sounds like living with him was a nightmare. Les salons de la vie de Trieste sont vassaux sur auguste et funeste. Parmi les grandes chaises, en cause de la malaise, des entropimients et des pestes. Some Harvard men, stalwart and hairy, drank up several bottles of sherry. In the yard around 3, they were shrieking with glee, "Come on out! We are burning a ferry." An Edwardian father named Udgeon, whose offspring provoked him to dudgeon, used on Saturday nights to turn down the lights and chase them around with a bludgeon. The babe, with a cry brief and dismal, fell into the water baptismal. Ere they'd gathered its plight, it had sunk out of sight, for the depth of the font was abysmal. A lady both callous and brash met a man with a vast black moustache. She cried, "Shave it, oh do, and I'll put it with glue on my hat as a sort of panache." A guest in a household quite charmless was informed its eccentric was harmless. If you're caught unawares at the head of the stairs, just remember, he's eyeless and armless. A beetling young woman named Pridgetts had a violent abhorrence of midgets. Off the end of a wharf, she once pushed a dwarf, whose truncation reduced her to fidgets. A lady born under a curse used to drive forth each day in a hearse. From the back she would wail through a thickness of veil, "Things do not get better, but worse." Each night father fills me with dread when he sits on the foot of my bed. I'd not mind that he speaks in gibbers and squeaks, but for 17 years he's been dead. There once was a young curate whose brain was deranged from the use of cocaine. He lured a small child to a copse dark and wild, where he beat it to death with his cane. A young man grew increasingly peaky in a house where the hinges were squeaky. The ferns curled up brown, the ceilings flaked down, and all of the faucets were leaky. The first child of a Mrs. Keats Shelley came to light with its face in its belly. Her second was born with a hump and a horn, and her third was as shapeless as jelly. There was a young woman named Els, who was subject to curious spells. When got up very oddly, she'd cry out things ungodly by the palms in expensive hotels. At whist drives and strawberry teas, Fan would giggle and show off her knees. But when she was alone, she'd drink eau de cologne and weep from a sense of unease. There was a young sportsman named Peel, who went for a trip on his wheel. He pedaled for days through crepuscular haze, and returned feeling somewhat unreal. A timid young woman named Jane found parties a terrible strain. With movements uncertain, she'd hide in a curtain, and make sounds like a rabbit in pain. Said a girl who upon her divan was attacked by a virile young man, "Such excess of passion is quite out of fashion," and she fractured his wrist with her fan. Un moine au milieu de la messe se leva et cria en détresse. La vie religieuse, c'est sale et effreuse, et se poignarde dans les fesses. Augustus, for splashing his soup, was put for the night on the stoop. In the morning he'd not repented a jot, and next day he was dead of the croup. A young lady who lived by the Usk subsisted each day on a rusk. She ate the first bite before it was light, and the last crumb some time after dusk. At the Villa Nemesia the sleepers are disturbed by a phantom in weepers. It beats all night long a dirge on a gong as it staggers about in the creepers. There was a young lady named Fleeger who was terribly, terribly eager to be all the rage on the tragedy stage, though her talents were pitifully meager. A lady who signs herself Vexed writes to say she believes she's been hexed. I don't mind my shins being stuck full of pins, but I fear I am coming unsexed. A gentleman otherwise meek detested with passion the leek. When offered one out, he dealt such a clout to the maid she was down for a week. While travelling in farthest Tibet, Lord Irongate found cause to regret the buttered-up tea, a pain in his knee, and the frivolous tourists he met. To his club-footed child, said Lord Stipple, as he poured his postprandial tipple, your mother's behaviour gave pain to our Saviour, and that's why he made you a cripple. From the bathing machine came a din, as of jollification within. It was heard far and wide, and the incoming tide had a definite flavour of gin. As tourists inspected the apse, an ominous series of raps came from under the altar, which caused some to falter, and others to shriek and collapse. Pour guère un excès de fièvre, un jeune homme poursuivit un lièvre. Il le prit à son trou, et fit faire un ragoût, des entrailles et des pâtes à Genève. A nurse, motivated by spite, tied her infantine charge to a knife. She launched it with ease on the afternoon breeze and watched till it flew out of sight. There's a rather odd couple in Hertz, who are cousins, or so each asserts. Their sex is in doubt, for they're never without their moustaches and long trailing skirts. The Dowager Duchess of Spout collapsed at the height of a rout. She found strength to say, as they bore her away, I should never have taken the trout. Said Francesca, my lack of volition is leading me straight to perdition, but I haven't the strength to go to the length of making an act of contrition. The sight of his guests filled Lord Cray at breakfast with horrid dismay, so he launched off the spoons, the pits from his prunes, at their heads as they neared the buffet. An incautious young woman named Ven was seen with the wrong sort of men. She vanished one day, but the following May her legs were retrieved from a fen. An indefatigable woman named Bavel had often occasion to travel. On the way she would sit and furiously knit, and on the way back she'd unravel. Having made a remark rather coarse, a young lady was seized with remorse. She fled from the room, and later a groom saw her rolling about in the gorse. An old gentleman's crotchets and quibblings were a terrible trial to his siblings, but he was not removed till one day it was proved that the bell-ropes were damp with his dribblings. There was a young man named Fred, who spent every Thursday in bed. He lay with his feet outside of the sheet and the pillows on top of his head. From number 9 Penwiper Mews, there is really abominable news. They've discovered a head in the box for the bread, but nobody seems to know whose. There was a young man who appeared to his friends with a full growth of beard. They at once said, although we can't say why it's so, the effect is uncommonly weird. Ce livre est dédié à Chagrin, qui fit un petit mannequin. Son bras est tout noir, il était à faire voir, en effet absolument la fin. See, that was quite whimsical. Let's catch up with the chat. Madness Entertainment Group says, "Hey Allie, hope you had fun on the Killer Karen show." I did. It was very fun. I hope that people watch it and also enjoy it as well. Felix says, "Hail and bow the horror of one." Mo says, "Hail Pops." Madness Entertainment Group says, "Hey Mo Biggs." Kevin Ryan says, "I think I used to date Whimsy back in school." Felix says, "The French was the coffee you just sipped." This is not coffee. I do not drink coffee. This is Liquid Death, Slaughterberry. It is iced tea agave with vitamins. It is very delicious. Yum. I love drinking all my liquid in cans. It's quite expensive, so I would never spill it. Felix says, "Hail and bow." Madness Entertainment says, "Hey Felix, hope all is well." Mo says, "Wait till she gets to He-Man from Nantucket." I did not know that that is where he was originally from. Is that going to be in the movie? Mobig says, "The." Ah, I see. The man from Nantucket. Pardon me. I did not read ahead. Kevin Ryan says, "Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. She longed for a buffet to fill out her tuffet, and once she was full she would stay." Needs work. Mobig said, "There once was a star-bellied sneetch." Less than? Whose glory seemed just out of reach. A sneetch born without was soon branded for clout, but at least had a lesson to teach. And that was a good lesson in how to write one of those poems. Limerick. I apologize. I could not remember the name. Mo Big says, "Here comes the anti-cocaine propaganda." Indeed. Kevin Ryan says, "You have caught me unawares. I don't care if I caught your underwear." Actual Ben Grimm dialogue from Fantastic Four. I do not know anything about Fantastic Four. I apologize. I actually did not grow up reading comics. Kevin Ryan says, "Je ne suis pas certain qu'il... Callie parle français. Un peu. Comment? Wow. We've been going for an hour and 18 minutes and 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 seconds, but I'm not going to keep counting the seconds. I do want to say thank you very much, everyone, for showing up for my little show tonight. Hopefully soon, Rainy and Allie World Building will be back. She's quite busy, as you all probably know, doing many, many things because she leaves her house and gets her comics done. So, thank you. I really appreciate everyone coming to my little show. I will say this, since it's my channel, I can sell my book if I wish. Please buy my book, Wild Men. It is in beautiful hardcover. It has scared grown men, but I'm not sure why. I guess you'll have to read it to find out. I think it probably has something to do with the fact that some men have been tormented by narcissists, and this sort of deals with that. But again, you'll have to read it to find out. I do have it available as well in ebook. That way you can buy the ebook and decide before you commit to the full, beautiful hardcover that I will sign if you wish. Un peu bon spectacle. Ah, merci beaucoup. Mo says, "Hail Allie, hail the chat, later body." I apologize, Felix, I missed this. Said with such emotion, I am convinced that it is delicious. Good. I'm glad I can be convincing as well as droll. Good night, everyone. And I'm sure there will be more. I do have fun things coming up this week, so make sure you keep this very fun, very amusing, entertaining and hilarious live stream in your hearts forever. I appreciate that. Sacre bleu. Merde.
How many MCs are coming out real? Like you been to hold me, I'ma check my feel. You claim to be a genius, man, you can't fight it. You might flip a script, but you know you didn't write it. I'm coming to bet you really old school like Houdini. The ibbity-bibbity bop, I boom boom like Mancini. Feed me, hip-hop, exotic like Kiwi. I got more power than the Rangers on the TV. Jumping on the track, spinning to it, then I dismount. My styles are more free than the 5-finger discount. Lift me in your mind and pass me the brain shovel. I'm thinking, baby, all my mentals into your level with the boom boom bitty-bitty bop to the bang. If you swing your thing with the gang, you can hang. Come and ride with me and the nocturnal crew. To the old school for the deja vu. I whip a track in half with more jazz in Utah. Deeper like a tuba, dive into it like a scuba. After my style change, gang will remain. Rhyming to the day I nick Big Daddy's cane. I'm sick of New Jacks trying to compete. I'll go put on my Pumas and watch Beat Street. But I'ma let them know cause my soul's full of mischief. Even your moms will say, damn, the kid's sweet. A lot of rappers coming out harder than rugby, that's cool.